Today is Friday. It is August the 13th. I'm coming to you with today's devotional commentary. The title is A Season of Sorrow, but the end is rejoicing. Now, our scripture reading is Psalm chapter 88 and Psalm 92. Now, today's devotional comes with a word from me as the author. And I wanted to just highlight it even for this video, and that is that my purpose in these daily devotionals is to give a historical context, an explanation when necessary, and then an application of spiritual truths that I often label as closing thoughts. I realize a lot of devotionals come with simply a verse, a poem, a little illustration, and that is it. But I felt my burden as a pastor, as a shepherd for Hillsdale Baptist Church and for others that follow this blog is to give an insight that goes well beyond simply a brief little thought. And so I hope that you will bear with me, as typically these videos will last anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes. My devotional readings will take up to maybe nearly 700 to 900 words. And with that said, we will go into today's devotional. Now, Psalm chapter 88, I've titled A Psalm of Lamentation. Somebody else would say a psalm of crying, a psalm of sorrow. Now, we're not sure what troubles and sorrows the author of Psalm 88 was facing. However, the verses do indicate that it was a time of great trial for the author whose name was Heman. Heman, you might remember, was one of three notable musicians who lived in David's time. He is the author of Psalm 88. Now, he opens up Psalm 88 with this call unto God, a plea to God as the God of my salvation. Verses 1 and 2, he describes how he cries to the Lord and he prays to the Lord day and night, pouring out his heart to the Lord. Now, Heman felt, as we read verses 3 through 6, he felt as though he would die if the Lord did not relieve him of the burdens of his troubles. Adding to his grief, verse 7, he felt he was oppressed by God's anger. He complained that he was lonely, writing, "Thou hast put away mine acquaintance, even my friends, my kindred spirits. Lord, you've driven them far from me. Thou hast made me an abomination," or someone that is detestable unto them. And he goes on and he writes, "And I am shut up, restrained, I'm confined, and I cannot come forth." You know, there might be some of you that have had COVID this year. You've dealt with sickness. You've dealt with physical afflictions. Maybe you've dealt with sorrows from family. You know all about being overwhelmed. Well, verse 9, overwhelmed and overcome with tears, the psalmist wrote, "I have called daily upon you, O Lord. I have stretched out my hands unto thee." Heman goes on and he pled with the Lord to spare his life, and reasoned with the Lord that should he die, he would not be able to give a testimony to any others of the Lord's character. He goes on and he says, in the grave, he cannot share with others the mercies of the Lord or tell them about how God is faithful and God is loving. Now, the reason for Heman's trials and troubles is not known, but his plea that he might be heard was insistent. In verse 14, he felt abandoned by God and he prayed, "Lord, why castest thou off my soul? Why do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me?" In verse 15, he's exhausted from his afflictions. He's overwhelmed by his sorrows, and he finally confesses, "Lord, I am afflicted and ready to die from my youth." In this point in his life, Heman felt as though that troubles had followed him his whole life, ever since he was a young man. Now, we know that wasn't true, but we also understand what it would be like to be in the circumstance that he found himself. He's despairing of life itself. Well, the psalm concludes finding Heman in a dark place. And there he confessed that he felt abandoned by those who loved him. It seemed as though only darkness was his friend. Now I'm going to close Psalm 88 with this thought. If not yet, you will one day suffer disappointments in this earthly life. In fact, you may find yourself in a similar dark place where we found Heman. He was a spiritual leader. He was a musician in the Lord's sanctuary. And nevertheless, though he prayed, his focus was on himself, his sorrows, his sufferings, and his loneliness. It's a dark place indeed. And it is in such an hour that we are challenged to bow our hearts to the will of the Lord and accept God is sovereign. Now may you and may I be like Job of old and trust God, knowing He is faithful. God bless you, my friend. Have a great day. Bye-bye.